Well, good morning. The April 8th, 2021 meeting of the State Board of Education will now come to order. Dr. Coley Chestnut, pastor of Fresh Anointing House of Worship in Selma, who is also the husband of Dr. Tanya Chestnut, our board member, will now offer the invocation. Dr. Chestnut.
Can you hear anything? Because they started the meeting.
Good morning to fellow citizens of Alabama, our governor. I want to begin our invocation with the psalm that says, "O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all of the earth, who have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babes and nursing infants, you have ordained strength." Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this wonderful day, this Kairos moment, this opportunity to come and to work on the behalf of goodness in the earth. We do thank you, Father, for our governor. We thank you for the state board members, for our leader in education. We lift them before you this morning. And then, Father, we would ask that we would be reminded that we are servant leaders, people who are called to lead, but we are servants. We're accountable to you. All that we do, we must do it because one day we will stand before you and be accountable. And so it is at this moment we humble ourselves and ask that you would bring wisdom, divine capabilities. The challenges of our world are great, but you are greater than our challenges. Lord, we thank you that you are a healer. We thank you that you are a way out of no way. We ask now that you would bless our governor as he leads all of the state of Alabama during these perilous times. Not only our governor, but Lord, all over this nation and world, challenges are many. So we look to you, O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all of the earth. And we do ask it in that matchless, wonderful, great name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
Attention, salute, and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Thornton, please call the roll.
Present.
Mrs. Bell. Governor Ivey.
Present.
Dr. McCarty.
Here.
Mrs. McRae.
Here.
Dr. Reynolds.
Here.
Dr. Richardson. Dr. Richardson.
Present.
Mrs. West.
Here.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Here.
Present.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a quorum.
Yes, ma'am, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We will now consider a motion to temporarily suspend certain provisions of the Alabama Administrative Code related to the requirement of the State Board of Education to vote by raised hand the provisions related to the establishment of a quorum by physical presence and meeting by electronic means. Is there a motion to suspend the rules in this
Governor
matter?
Wayne Reynolds makes that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, West.
We have a second. Is there any discussion?
Present.
Each member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will now call the roll.
Mrs. Bell? Mrs. Bell? Dr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Governor Ivy?
Yes.
Dr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mrs. McRae?
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Thank you. Item E, we will now consider a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion. Any
Second, Reynolds.
Second. We have a second. Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will call the roll.
Mrs. Bell? Mrs. Bell?
She's muted.
Dr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Governor Ivy?
Yes.
Dr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mrs. McRae?
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
Vote carries, Governor.
Thank you. Item F, approval of minutes. We'll consider a motion to approve the minutes for the March 11th, 2021 meeting of the Alabama State Board of Education. Is there a motion to approve?
So move, Reynolds.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, McCarty.
Richardson, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton, please call the roll.
Yes.
Mrs. Bell? Mrs. Bell? Dr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Governor Ivy?
Yes.
Dr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mrs. McRae?
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
Vote carries, Governor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Thornton, has anyone signed up to speak today?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. We have 12 public speakers.
Okay, I'll ask that you and Attorney Jason Swan handle that. Call our guests to speak.
Yes, thank you, Governor. Everyone should have received an email related to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Just want to go over some ground rules. Obviously, please mute yourself until you're called on to speak. We've got a lot of folks online, and we've got maybe a couple people that are present. Also, the order was determined by our rules, how you signed up for the public hearing portion to speak.
I'm trying to participate in the board meeting. They can't hear me if you're talking. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Who's speaking?
Secondly, also please maintain all proper decorum. And if you would, please identify yourself and then who you represent. And according to the rules, we'll have 2 minutes per speaker. And I will try to provide you notice of about 30 seconds left of your 2 minutes. And I want to kind of go over the list right quick of who I have, and I think there may be some other ones that I don't have, and we'll add those in. Dave Weiss, Devin Lowe, just so you know what order you're in. Tamia Kemp, Amberly Jones, Savannah Berryman, Latarius Christian, Kathy Dean, Austin Bullock, Michael Becharano, and Stacia Gaines. So at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Weiss for his 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. Governor Ivey, Dr. Mackey, members of the State Board of Education. I am Dave Weiss. I am District 4 Representative and current President of the Madison County Board of Education. I want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you this morning. It is a true honor and privilege and pleasure to do so. I am here today to address the State Board of Education's consideration of adopting a policy that would mandate every high school senior complete the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, beginning in the 2021-2022 school year. I believe this is an incredible overreach of government to make this a requirement. I believe that it is not the State Board of Education's place to mandate such a requirement. At best, it should be at the legislative level. I fully understand that at the request of you, Governor Ivey, there be an opt-out feature placed in this policy. Yet that makes this proposal even more puzzling. Why even pass it in the first place? Currently, parents and students have the choice to complete the FAFSA or not, and this is based on whether or not the child plans to attend college after graduation, or whether they even need to secure any kind of financial aid. In my research on this topic, I am aware that Alabama is not the first state to consider this measure. Colleges and universities may start mandating the use of the FAFSA form to determine scholarship eligibility. Pell Grants are currently available to a very small percentage of students that apply. This is very disturbing in that a student that is highly qualified academically but may have lesser financial need could receive less scholarship money than a student who is just as academically qualified but of lesser means. Both should be considered not for financial means, but on their academic performance. The FAFSA form additionally mandates that you divulge personal financial information above and beyond the personal income tax documentation you're required to provide, and some may find this very intrusive. Some examples of financial information required to be disclosed that are not disclosed on your federal income tax are available cash balances in your saving and checking accounts, non-reportable income like child support, and non-educational veterans benefits. As local and state leaders of education, our focus should and needs to remain on providing Alabama children access to tools needed to graduate and be successful beyond school, be it attending a 2 to 4 year university, trade school, military service, or entertaining the workforce. I ask the members of the State Board of Education to vote no on the adoption of this policy. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you this morning.
Okay, next, Mr. Devin Lowe, if you're online with us, if you could unmute yourself and, again, introduce yourself and who you represent. Mr. Lowe? Okay, let's move along. Tamia Kemp, is Tamia on the line with us? And if so, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and who you represent, please.
Hi, I am here online. Thank you to Governor Ivey and the board for this opportunity to share my story. My name is Tamia Kemp, and I am a student at Miles College in Birmingham, Alabama. I am here to advocate for including FAFSA completion as a high school graduation requirement because the FAFSA opens up several opportunities for high school seniors going into college. I personally was offered a Pell Grant, which helped me pay for my school. The FAFSA also leads to work-study opportunities on campus. So, for students who think that college may be too expensive, these grants and work-study jobs will be really helpful to know about before ruling out colleges because of the prices. I know several of my classmates did not complete the FAFSA, so they don't know what they were able to get as a Pell Grant or the opportunities that were available. I also feel the FAFSA is important because most colleges look for your EFC, which is an index calculated by the FAFSA, to determine whether or not you qualify for scholarships and what scholarships will best fit you to make your college experience better. I know that my college requested that I have my FAFSA complete before I even applied for scholarships. Because they had this information on hand, they were able to award me a scholarship that paid my whole tuition, so it wouldn't have to come out of my pocket. Thank you for letting me tell my story.
Thank you, Ms. Kemp. The next speaker is Amberly Jones. Amberly, if you will please unmute yourself, identify yourself, and then who you represent, please. Amberly Jones.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. You're free to begin.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to say thank you to Governor Kay Ivey and the Alabama State Board of Education for the opportunity to speak. My name is Amberly Jones, and I'm a current sophomore at Bishop State Community College. I'm extremely honored to have this opportunity to advocate for the FAFSA application to be a requirement for high school students in Alabama. The financial support I received by applying for the FAFSA has been beneficial in more ways than one. My senior year of high school was very rewarding but extremely busy. I was preparing to be a commencement speaker for graduation, leading clubs and organizations, trying to keep my grades up, and now preparing to transition into the world of higher education. My world revolved around applying for schools and scholarships, scheduling tours, and everything the transition entailed. Unfortunately, I was also grieving and planning a funeral for my mother who unexpectedly passed in a car crash. All of this combined made my senior year a little bit more hectic than usual, and also forced my father and I to be strategic on how we were going to continue my education. Fortunately, I had guidance to encourage me to apply for FAFSA, and I received financial aid. This made the financial burden on my dad a little lighter because of the opportunities the Pell Grant presented to me. This shows how FAFSA significantly changed my life in the beginning of my college journey, but the rewards are still significant today as a sophomore. Through this process, I've been blessed to be able to be a work student for my financial aid department at school. This experience has sharpened my interpersonal skills, and I'm also given the opportunity to study when needed. It's an all-around great opportunity. If I was never encouraged to complete the FAFSA application, my college journey could have turned out a lot differently. However, I am very glad that I did, and thus is making my second transition to a university a lot easier for both me and my father. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. The next speaker is Savannah Berryman. Ms. Berryman, if you'll please unmute yourself, and the clock starts, and you can introduce yourself and who you represent.
Good morning. Thank you to Governor Ivey and the board for this opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Savannah Berryman, and I am a sophomore at Northwest Shoals Community College and chapter president for Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society in my school. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about my experience with the FAFSA. While attending Northwest, I was given the opportunity to work as a federal work-study student in the Northwest Shoals Career Center. The Career Center offers services such as work-based learning, professional branding, resume assistance, interview preparation, and career closet. I began working there in September of 2019 and worked as a front desk receptionist until January 2020. The relationships I developed through that experience, as well as the professional and social skills I was taught, have followed me to this day. I was able to get resume assistance and education career advisement. All of this was possible because I completed the FAFSA. Working as a federal work-study student opened up so many doors for me. In fact, my previous supervisor is the one who encouraged me to join Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society and to apply to become an officer. I can say without a doubt, becoming an officer for PTK and eventually becoming president of the Northwest Shoals chapter has been the most rewarding experience of my life. Had it not been for my involvement in PTK, I would have never even been considered for the New Century Transfer Pathway Scholarship, for which only one student in the state of Alabama is chosen, or the All-USA Academic Team Scholarship, for which only 20 students are chosen in the entire nation. Completing the FAFSA created so many opportunities for me and for students in our state. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Latarius Christian, if you're on the line, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and who you represent, please. Latarius Christian. Okay, let's go to the next speaker, Kathy Dean. Kathy Dean, if you're on the line, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and who you represent, please. Kathy Dean. Okay, let's go to the next speaker, Austin Bullock. Austin, if you're on the line, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then who you represent, please. Austin, you're up. If you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please. Okay, let's go to the next speaker, and we'll come back to these individuals. Michael Becharano. Michael, are you on the line? If you can unmute yourself and please introduce yourself. Having some technical difficulties, so please bear with us. No. If you can hear me, we're having some technical difficulties. If you'll just hold on for just a moment, please. Michael Becharano, can you hear me, Michael? And if so, can you introduce yourself and then introduce who you represent? Okay, I hear somebody. Huh.
Mic check, 1, 2. Information services, mic check.
Michael Becharano, if you don't mind, please mute yourself and attempt to talk, see if we can hear you. Unmute. If you heard me, unmute. That's why I went to law school and not IT school. No. Can anybody hear me? If you can, raise your hand. Well, not the people. Duly noted. Let the record reflect. Scott.
Austin Bullock, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Oh,
Austin, can you unmute yourself?
I can hear
Yes,
now.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
okay. Michael Becharano, can you unmute yourself and if you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Introduce yourself and who you represent, and you've got 2 minutes.
Austin or Michael?
Let's go with Austin since we had to skip Austin. I know you're on the line. Austin, if you don't mind, go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and you've got 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Austin Bullock, and I am with Central 6 Alabama Works. First, I'd like to thank Governor Ivey and the other members of the State Board of Education for allowing me to speak today. When I say that I wholeheartedly support requiring a completed FAFSA application before graduation, it's with two mindsets. As an undergraduate student, my education was on possible because of a combination of federal financial aid and scholarships. I was a first-generation college student. I came from a household that fell well below the poverty line, and every penny felt up in. And I'm extremely thankful that I had education professionals that made me aware of and walked me through the FAFSA completion process. But I believe it's also important to recognize that others may not have received the same level of awareness or instruction. As someone working now in the workforce development world, I believe that education of various pathways, including higher education, is instrumental in Alabama attaining jobs that pay a livable wage. I also recognize that it has an attainment goal of 500,000 credentials by 2025, and I can't help but think that requiring each student to at least consider FAFSA completion is going to positively contribute to those goals and to the career success of our students. I hope this morning that you will strongly consider supporting this additional requirement. Thank you for your service to our state, and thank you again for allowing me a moment of your time.
Okay, thank you, Austin. Next, Michael, since we've definitely got you on the line, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and who you represent, and you have 2 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Becharano. I am the project manager for Building It Together at Central 6 Alabama Works. My personal experience with Pell Grants and FAFSA was very important and instrumental in changing my life. In the second semester of my senior year of high school, my father unexpectedly passed away, and which created an incredible financial burden and turmoil within my family. I didn't think I would be able to attend college. At that point, I had already been accepted. The Pell Grants and FAFSA made it possible for me to actually transition from high school into my freshman year of college. I went on to graduate with higher than a 3.0 grade average from UC Berkeley. I later went on to win an award for economic development from President George W. Bush for economic development work in the state of California. And I don't think any of that would have been possible without Pell Grants and FAFSA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Our next speaker, Stacia Gaines. Stacia, if you're on the line, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, I'm Stacia Gaines. Thankful to Governor Ivey, Superintendent Mackey, and members of the Board of Education. I am currently chairman of the Central 6 Alabama Works Board, and I'm also talent acquisition manager at Altech. Very heavily involved in workforce development, but my story with FAFSA, which interestingly enough originated the year that I did, the year of my birth, helped me attend Samford University, the school of my choice. My dad was a Baptist minister. My mother didn't work, and so we didn't have a lot of money for college, but my parents wanted me to attend the school that I thought was the best fit for me. And so Samford offered ministerial discounts, but so much of the rest of my college education was supported through Pell Grants and through 4 years of work study that came through financial aid. I got an elementary education degree from Samford University in 1987, and I am currently pursuing my MBA at UAB. And my employer, Altech, is actually paying for all of this particular degree. But without FAFSA, I would not have been able to complete my undergrad degree for sure. And I graduated with some student debt, but not anything insurmountable. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. And let me go back over the list to make sure we didn't miss anybody that is available to speak. Devin Lowe. Devin, are you on the line? Devin Lowe? Okay. Latarius Christian? Latarius Christian?
Yes. Good morning. I'm here. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you. You can go ahead and speak. Just please identify yourself and then who you're speaking on behalf or who you represent.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Good morning. Thank you to Governor Ivey, the Alabama State Board of Education, and my board member, Dr. Yvette Richardson, for this opportunity to share my story with you this morning. My name is Latarius Christian, and I am the lead counselor at Parker High School. I am here today to advocate for including FAFSA completion as a high school graduation requirement. I ask that you support this policy that will benefit the students in my district by closing equity gaps in post-secondary education. In fact, research proved that 92% of high school seniors who complete FAFSA attend college directly from high school in the fall, compared to only 51% of non-completers. The completion of FAFSA has allowed my students to apply and receive need-based scholarships and grants to prestigious schools who provide 100% financing to meet the needs of students. Birmingham City Schools prioritizes FAFSA completion by collaborating with local stakeholders to hold district-wide FAFSA as well as individual workshops at every school. Please support this policy, as it is the only way that our low-income students will receive an opportunity to afford and attend college. We need for other states to see that Alabama is committed to building a college-going community. And thanks again.
Thank you, Ms. Christian. One last chance. Devin Lowe. Devin, if you're on the line. Last chance. Okay, that's all the speakers we have listed. Governor, that concludes the public hearing portion.
I'm sorry, sir. I was listed Kathy Dean and haven't been given a chance to speak.
Okay, Kathy, I'm sorry, you weren't on my list, but please identify yourself and who you represent.
I would like to thank Governor Ivey and the board for the opportunity to share my story with you today. My name is Kathy Dean, and I'm a high school counselor at Sulligent High School. I'm here to advocate for including the FAFSA completion as a high school graduation requirement because my students that qualify for a Pell Grant will have earned enough money to pay for all their expenses at the community college. Students who also earn a full Pell Grant can receive the Advantage Scholarship at the University of Alabama, which will then pick up the rest of their tuition, and they won't owe any money for tuition. Some scholarships are also need-based, and this means that they must complete the FAFSA in order to apply for those scholarships. College Counts Scholarship is one particular one that the state of Alabama gives out to one student in every county, $2,000 to a community college and $4,000 for a four-year school. Again, the FAFSA has to be completed before our students can fill that out. Lamar County students also have an incentive to fill the FAFSA out so they can receive the BOE tuition grant. This helps the families that do not, are not able to get the full Pell Grant. They can receive this grant, and it will pay for all of their tuition at the Bevel State Community College, the local college where I'm from. As it stands, Sulligent High School is at 92.2% of all their seniors that have completed the FAFSA, which I'm very proud of. But I only support it if there is a way that kids that their parents will not fill out the FAFSA can opt out. This cannot be a barrier for a graduating senior. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. Anybody else that signed up that's on the line to speak that I did not read your name? If you did.
Yes, this is Chandra Scott with Alabama Possible.
Please say your name again and then who you represent.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. This is Chandra Scott. I'm with the Executive Director for Alabama Possible. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this morning about the FAFSA policy. In our state, it's alarming to know that we have about 57.4% of our students in Alabama alone who qualify for the FAFSA, but don't take advantage of this opportunity to receive up to $6,495 in Pell Grant aid. We have to make sure we close this gap for making sure all students have access to this free aid that would lend them to a pathway to a post-secondary education. The governor has given us a robust goal of having 500,000 credential Alabamians by 2025. One clear way to get into that path is making sure that everyone has access to financial aid to be able to take on the post-secondary pathway of their choice. We want to make sure that we reach this goal because in the midst of the pandemic, we know that post-secondary college enrollment is at its all-time low. One way to make sure all of our institutions in our state do not continue to suffer from low enrollments is to make sure students have access to financial aid they need to take on a post-secondary pathway. As of March 5th, 2021, only 38.3% of our students have completed the FAFSA in our state. This is not an acceptable percentage. And having a FAFSA mandate for high school graduates to be able to complete the FAFSA will remove this low percentage rate, put Alabama as an exemplar amongst other states in how do you close equity gaps and get more students to post-secondary pathways to have a better and more prosperous way in life. This is definitely a pathway to removing barriers to prosperity in our state. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Anybody remaining to speak that signed up? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the public hearing portion. Thank you for your patience and apologize for the technical difficulties.
Well, thank you, Attorney Swan. Item H, Ms. Thornton, is there any unfinished business?
There's no unfinished business.
Okay. Before we go to new business, I want to, from the chair, recognize Ms. Stephanie Bell and give her our condolences in the loss of her mother. We recognize that Dr. Daniel Boyd, Deputy Superintendent, will soon be retiring. He served for a number of years as Superintendent of Lowndes County. And today is Jackie Ziegler's birthday. Under new business, we'll now consider a resolution to recognize Ms. Dawn Morrison for being selected as the Barbara Fannin Memorial Employee of the Quarter for April through June 2021. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second, McRae.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or nay. Ms. Thornton will call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, Ms. Morrison.
Is she here? Yes. There she is. Stand up. There she is.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. We will now consider our resolution to modify the passing praxis score for the area of family and consumer science as a precondition for initial certification. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I so move, Wayne Reynolds.
Second, Chestnut.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Please call the roll, Ms. Darlington.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Thank you. We'll now consider a resolution to authorize review of the Educator preparation programs at the University of Alabama in Huntsville.
So move, Wayne Reynolds.
We have a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a
Yvette
second.
Richardson.
Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Thank you. We now have a resolution to extend the approval and to grant probationary approval for educator preparation programs at Spring Hill College. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I so move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, West.
We have a second. Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will now call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Thank you. We will now consider a resolution to extend approval of educator preparation programs at the University of South Alabama. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second, McRae.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Thank you. We will now consider a resolution to announce the intent to amend Alabama Administrative Code, Chapter 290-3-1, pertaining to public school governance. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved, McCarty. Second, West.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Governor, this is Stephanie Bell. Dr. Mackey, can you explain, for those who were not in attendance at the work session, anyone in the audience or watching live stream, and also for the benefit of board members who would like to know specifically what this particular change is about, and it is the intent to amend.
Yes, ma'am, I'd be glad to do that. So this is a large, it's a lot of paper. You'll see that there are strikes, the board members have it, and it'll be public then for 45 days before the final rule is adopted 2 meetings from now. But you'll see there are a lot of strike-throughs and there are some additions, but it's mostly cleaning up the section around student records and taking out some things for graduation that are no longer, they're not required, but were never cleaned up and removed from the code. But the big issue here, and what you will be voting to do, the next vote is an emergency rule that addresses just a small portion of this, and then there's the bigger item. But the big thing is taking out the requirement for students to provide a social security number to enroll in school. Now, we have not used social security numbers for a number of years because we use student identification numbers instead, and actually we're no longer allowed under federal law to require a social security number. But it's still in the old code. And so what we're doing is cleaning up the code to make it match federal law and current practice.
I did notice that there was an underlined section with the change in accreditation requirement having to do with certain schools as well.
Yes, so if you see, I know on page 74, and I think it's in one other place, so in the current code, it lists certain regional accrediting associations, at least one of which no longer even exist. And so what this would say now is that for accreditation, we would look for agencies, institutional accrediting agencies recognized by the Secretary of the United States Department of Education, so that as accrediting agencies go away, as y'all know, we used to be Southern Association of Colleges and Schools in this region, and that's no longer, they're now called Cognia, and they've merged with another one of the regional accrediting associations, so it's getting hard to keep up with them. So this would say that if the U.S. Secretary of Education recognizes an accrediting agency, then we recognize that accrediting agency. And it also would bring in some additional agencies that only accredit private schools, I think, that are recognized by the Secretary but are not currently in our code. So we have some private schools that are accredited by an agency recognized by the Secretary, but they're not recognized in Alabama because they're not a member of one of these. So this would allow those to become part of our accredited agreement so that we accept credits back and forth between private and public schools.
I wanted to specifically ask about the agreement that was reached before you were state superintendent and maybe even before you were a local superintendent regarding Christian schools specifically. You may recall there were questions and concerns because of certain issues regarding accreditation and students who wanted to enter, for example, the fire college or go in to the police academy. How does that impact that particular concern from the past?
Well, now that I do not know. If it was an agreement reached before I was superintendent, nobody has brought that up. I don't think this would change anything because we're adding more accrediting agencies. We're not taking anything away. So anyone who currently has recognized accreditation will still have it. This just widens that a little bit by saying if the Secretary approves a new accrediting agency, then we recognize what the Secretary approves. But it doesn't take any accreditation away.
My concern is for the future, obviously, the way that it was worked out, some of those issues may not be recognized by the U.S. Secretary of Education because they may not know about them, and it may be a very limited list. And I did go and look at it, and that is a concern that I have. And I know that was not mentioned in the discussion at the work session, and I do think that that's something worth looking into because we will have to deal with that situation in the future, perhaps, with some of the schools. And that's very important to them. And again, I know you were not there, or superintendent may not have been a local superintendent even at the time, but it was a very big issue and a discussion that we had for a number of meetings, and it was worth it. But again, if we're trying to help every student, that's something that I hope this does not negatively impact I will abstain on it for that reason. I do have a question, and I think that that's a question that needs to be answered before it is adopted and included in the administrative code.
So one thing that might clarify that for you is just recognize we do not eliminate the last statement in that paragraph that says, or other organizations approved by the State Board of Education. So in addition to those agencies recognized by the Secretary, any organization recognized by this board would automatically be approved. And so if that was an agreement that the board came to, then the answer would be yes. They would still, we're not undoing anything that the board has agreed to in the past. If there was not an agreement with the board, then we certainly be glad to research that. But if there's a previous agreement, then that is not stricken. You'll notice that last line is still there.
Dr. Mackey,
Can
Wayne
you look
Reynolds.
on 74 and look at what's listed there? I think it's, again, something that needs to be considered. Again, for the future, we have to be very careful about unintended consequences. And of course, you mentioned cleaning up, and if that's what happens when you don't look at the entire picture. I know that happens in the legislature where they have unintended consequences, and that's something that we need to try to avoid as a board. And we've tried, and we've done actually a pretty good job of that by being very thorough. And I think in this case, it's still important that we do so. We need to be very thorough in looking at the overall picture, especially for the future.
Thank Dr. Reynolds.
Dr. Mackey, could I, in follow-up to Ms. Bell's request, ask that you and your staff review any pre-existing agreements so that we can clarify that to make certain that the individuals in our state understand the inclusions that are going to be not just restricted to the U.S. Department of Education, but also include, since you weren't aware of it, and it even may precede me, as old as I am, I'd like some clarification so we know what we're doing.
Is there any more discussion? Each member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Abstain.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Vote carries, Governor.
Thank you. We'll now consider a resolution to adopt amended Alabama Administrative Code Emergency Rule 290-3-1-.02.01 pertaining to regulations concerning Social Security numbers as an emergency rule. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, McRae.
We have a second on the motion. Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will now please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Thank you very much. Item H, we will now consider a resolution to adopt amended Alabama Administrative Code Rule 290-3-1-.0221 pertaining to the free application of federal student aid. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved, McCarty.
We have a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second, Chestnut.
Is that Richardson second?
Is there any discussion?
Yes, Governor. This is Stephanie Bell. I want to point out that this, although some of the testimony during the hearing just specifies that it was good to have the FAFSA filled out, this is not about the merits of the FAFSA. And we just passed a requirement to remove the Social Security number, but yet the FAFSA requires the Social Security number. There's so much personal information, and that was shared by our first speaker, and he did an excellent job, and I very much appreciate what he has shared. It's also in so many of the emails that I have received, I know other board members have also received from guidance counselors opposing the requirement. They're not in opposition to filling out the options, the choice, the personal choice and personal decision to fill out the FAFSA. These guidance counselors encourage students to do so. They're not saying that they're against it. But the requirement for graduation is something that should be an option given to students and not an opt-out option. And I understand that the language has been changed, but it still is a requirement for graduation. I think in the future, the guidance counselors and others, parents who have called and contacted me in various ways, they've sent text messages even because they had my number. But the fact is that it's not about the FAFSA. It's about it's a requirement in order to graduate. And if you don't want to fill it out, you have to go through the process of receiving a waiver. And that's just an unnecessary part of what the board would be putting in place for graduation. It's already tough enough for the students, and yes, it is something that has helped so many students, and the testimony certainly reveals that, but it's not something that should be a requirement for graduation. And so I will continue to vote no for that reason, not because I don't think they should fill out the FAFSA if they want to, or if the parents see fit to do so, but you're handing over a great deal of personal information. It's not as smooth going as others have tried to make it sound. Those who've experienced it know that it's not a lot of fun. But I do think that it should be encouraged, and it already is encouraged. And we have heard that from so many guidance counselors who have contacted us in various ways. I will vote no.
Governor.
Is there any other discussion? Dr.
Yes, sir.
Reynolds?
Yes, sir, Governor. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. And I would like to express a personal appreciation for David Weiss to taking his own time to drive down here from Madison County. He's chairman of the board. And I take his words very much to heart because he represents the administrative side of this rule. I appreciate all those comments from those individuals who received benefits from FAFSA. And frankly, that may indicate the unnecessariness of this rule, because if they've all been able to do this under our current governance, what's the big deal? To require the intrusion into privacy as much as this does. And I can tell you, as a national representative for veterans groups, some of the requirement of inclusion of earned benefits from disabilities as an income is resentful. And I represent a number of groups who are undocumented, and they are concerned. It's a real concern in our country about the availability of data once you put it online. And FAFSA has been around a long time, and it's a very intrusive document. And once that data is put online and available, it'll be much more available for government involvement, and it is an unfunded mandate. Governor, I wish we had included some monies in our budget to help local school systems. I saw an email from a career counselor who admitted and acknowledged that it was a good role for career counselors, but not a necessary overreach for a requirement on our current school counselors. Thank you, Governor, for allowing me to.
Any more discussion? Dr. Mackey, do you have any comments?
No, ma'am, unless I need to answer any questions. I know there's been a lot of debate. We've certainly had a lot of speakers from outside. I see both sides of that, but I certainly do think that it would be helpful. And the reason is because the couple of other states that have done this have seen a dramatic increase in the number of students applying for aid and going on to college. And we have a goal, you've set a goal for us, and we consider that our goal, get 500,000 credentialed workers added to our economy by 2025, and we're almost halfway through 21, and this is a way to get more people with those credentials, to make sure they understand that they have an opportunity to pay for school. And so we've heard from counselors that thought it was going to be a good bit more work on them. We've heard from counselors who say, no, this is what they got into it for. I think there will always be two sides to everything, but I made the recommendation to the board, and I still believe it is the right thing to do for our students.
Dr. Mackey, may I ask you one question, Wayne Reynolds?
Yes, Dr. Reynolds.
If this passes, will we be able to put the opt-out form on our website and publicize that families can download that? Because that's one of the important considerations, is the opt-out. So I think we, as the State Board and the State Department of Education, should make that option more readily available to download and have that form, and not even pass that on to local school systems. And so if we do it as a public feature and publicize that as part of this rule, that would make me feel much better.
Sure. And we will do a model form, and we can do that.
Online.
Thank you. Online.
Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will now please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
No.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
No.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
No.
Vote carries, Governor.
Thank you. We will now consider a resolution to approve the recommendation to promote Ms. Angela Martin to Deputy State Superintendent of Instruction at pay grade 92, step 18, effective April 16, 2021.
Wayne Reynolds, so move.
We have a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second, Chestnut.
Yvette Richardson.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Governor, this is Stephanie Bell. First of all, those who have been a part of the board, it is any that I abstain, because I think that this is something that should be the state superintendent's decision. I do have a question, however. When you state the pay grade 92 and then 90, what actually are you, for the next one that we will address, if you would share also the actual pay, the salary for each of those who you're promoting or hiring for I and J as they're announced, instead of just stating the pay grade 92. That was not in their information, and I would like to know, but I will abstain, as I have done in the past, because I think that it is not necessary, and I understand your reasoning, but I disagree.
Dr. Mackey?
Yes, ma'am. So that is pay grade 92, step 18. It is between $200,000 and $201,000.
So what is the actual pay that her salary will be?
Well, it's 200,000 and something. I can't remember exactly. I know it's 200,000. I know it's less than 201,000.
Okay, is that part of the reason why you're asking the board to approve the hiring? Because the only thing that we're required to do by law is to hire the state superintendent.
Well, no, ma'am. As you know, you and I know have had this discussion several times, and I understand your understanding of the law is that the state board does not need to approve assistant and deputy superintendents and non-married employees because they serve at the discretion of the superintendent. But the ruling by the State Personnel Board and their legal counsel is that the board does have to approve those. And as y'all probably remember, they were for a couple of superintendents or maybe, I don't know, for a number of years, the board did not approve those. During the interim time when Dr. Richardson was here, he went back to State Board and asked for a clarification, and they ruled that they did require State Board approval. And so that's what it's my understanding the only way to change that would be if the board wanted us to go to the legislature and ask for that to be changed, which we could do next year, or I mean, I guess we could do it this year, but I'm just have to follow the rule as it was given to me.
By the State Personnel Board.
By the State Personnel Board, yes, ma'am.
This is actually for non-merit system, and also it's within the salary schedule that is larger than what could be the norm and what has been in the past the norm. But anyway, if you could also add the salary amount for the next item, but I will address that at the same time, but I've pretty much spoken to that.
Dr. Mackey, could you provide us with the attorney's opinion, because I've only been on the board 2 years and I'm not as familiar with it as I should. And I appreciate your bringing these issues to us to help us in governance, even if it's not required, but I would appreciate some clarification from the legal sources that you reference.
Okay.
And Dr. Mackey, part of my concern has to do with the fact that at least with the state superintendent, the board has the authority, and the local boards do also have the authority to not only hire, but remove, fire an assistant superintendent or someone that the board actually does hire. In this case, that's your option. And in so many of these cases, we actually don't have individuals who have served even at the local level as the local superintendent. But this is not anything to reflect negatively on this individual. It's something that overall, as you know, I am concerned about, and I have been concerned in the past.
Each member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton will now please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Abstain?
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
I too abstain.
Vote carries, Governor.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, Ms. Martin.
Yes, right there. Why don't you stand up? Stand up.
We will now consider a motion to approve the recommendation to hire Shanthia Washington as Assistant State Superintendent for Evaluation, Accountability, and Support at pay grade 90, step 18, effective April 16th, 2021. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I so move, Wayne Reynolds.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Governor, I can provide that salary. So the salary for Ms.
Thank you.
Washington would be $172,738, and the exact salary for Ms. Martin was $200,712.
And does Mrs. Washington, has she retired and now returned, and how does that impact her retirement? I assume not much, if any.
She did retire almost 3 years ago, but will be coming out of retirement, so she won't draw retirement. She'll be coming out of retirement and going back to work full-time.
Each member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Abstain?
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Abstain.
Vote carries, Governor.
Thank you. Congratulations, Ms. Washington. Please stand up. Dr. Mackey, do you have any public or legal information to share?
I do not, Governor. I do not, Governor.
Do you have a report?
I do have a report, Governor, and I will keep it brief. First, say thank you for approving those two wonderful ladies. They're going to do an excellent job. We're very sorry about losing Dr. Boyd. He is going to work his way out and mentor Ms. Martin over the next couple of months, so he will be here. A couple of you have asked me this morning, will you see him again? And unless he just goes AWOL on us, yes, you'll see him again, and we'll properly celebrate his retirement at the right time. But we are really glad to have good people that he has worked with. He has mentored already Miss Martin, and he and I both, when we went through all the things that need to be done, we felt like she's just the right person. There are many qualified people out there. There are qualified people across this state. There are other qualified people in this department. But she will be able to step right in, and we will not miss a beat. And we're in a very difficult time as we continue to maneuver through this pandemic, and I have no doubt that she is the right person to do that. Ms. Washington, many of you will remember, was here, was an assistant superintendent. She retired during the interim year when Dr. Richardson was here, and we have brought her back to do some other things since. She's actually been interim special ed director for us. And is actually working right now, helping our new special education director, who I'm about to recognize in just a minute. And so we're thrilled that she was willing to come out of retirement and come back and help us. And these two will be wonderful leaders for this department and for this board. I do want to recognize we have some educators with us, have had some educators, certainly Board Chairman Weiss, thank you today for coming down and joining us. I think the two school counselors who were online have left us, but Ms. Christian and Ms. Dean are both outstanding counselors whom I look forward to meeting in person. Mr. Stevens talks and brags about them all the time, and I'm sorry they're not on here to hear me brag about them, but hopefully in time we'll get to meet them and appreciate the work that all these public servants do. We have a retired principal with us too today. Miss Priscilla Yother is sitting back here, and her daughter, she's retired principal of Euro Brown School in Etowah County. Her daughter is a lawyer upstairs for the Revenue Department, and she had always wanted to just attend a state board meeting, and so she's just here to watch. And we thank you, and thank you for your service as a principal.
And she's in my district.
She's in your district, a voter.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I do want to recognize one other lady. Miss Morrison had to leave and get back upstairs. Oh, no, there she is. We want some pictures with you, Don Morrison, before you leave. A wonderful, wonderful contributor to this department. Most of you know her name because she's been leading our computer science work for a number of years, but works in career technical education. And she does so much more than that. I had the opportunity Friday morning to interrupt her presentation so I could speak to that CTE staff, but she does a great job with everything she does, and we're thrilled to have her as recognized as the Employee of the Quarter. And I do want to recognize Dr. DeLee Chambers, who is our new Special Education Director. And she's also been in the department for some time, does a wonderful job, but has only recently taken on that role. And we're thrilled to have Dr. Chambers in that role. So, Governor, we've got good people doing good work in a very difficult time. But I conclude my report today by saying that today, the vast majority of our students are in a classroom, in-person instruction. And
Amen.
we're going to end this school year in a much better place than we were in 12 months ago. Thank you.
Governor, before you make the final report, are we contemplating meeting totally in person next month, or are you still part of your administrative decision?
Suits me to meet in person.
Yes, sir. Because we had, the evidence of the amount of technical problems that we had. If we can meet, and we've got all of us here except Ms. Bell, and she has some special circumstances, I would hope that we could just move and not have that motion to change the rule and have an in-person meeting next month.
I hope so too. Y'all, Alabama's done a great job in getting our young people back in person in class as compared to many other states, and we've made great progress, but the federal government's sending billions of dollars down here, and we must ensure that these unprecedented federal dollars are used as strategic investment to not only combat the learning loss associated with COVID-19, but to ensure we achieve the priorities set in the Alabama Archives strategic plan and strong start, strong finish, including literacy, numeracy, and college and career readiness. I certainly look forward to working with each of you as we determine how to make these strategic investments over the coming weeks and months. The next elementary and secondary education meeting of the Alabama State Board of Education will be held on Thursday, May 13th, 2021 at 10 a.m. in the Gordon Persons Building Auditorium, and the work session will immediately follow the board meeting in Room Plaza 103 in the Gordon Persons Building. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Each board member will indicate his or her vote when called upon by saying yes or no. Ms. Thornton, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Chestnut,
Yes.
Governor Ivy,
Yes.
Dr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mrs. McRae,
Yes.
Dr. Reynolds,
Absolutely, yes.
Dr. Richardson. Yes. Mrs. West,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, Governor.
Motion carries and we are adjourned.
And may I say, we'll reconvene in 20 minutes for our work session.